Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
I saw someone else's hand on her waist. That's the first thing I remember. The way his fingers spread across her blazer as she stepped out of that black Lexus. The security camera caught it all. I leaned in closer to my laptop screen, watched on loop how he guided her forward, gentle at first, then more possessive. She looked at him with that quick little smile I used to know so well. I couldn't move for a few seconds, couldn't breathe. It felt like my mind was stuck watching the same slice of time over and over. For a few minutes, I just hovered my finger over the trackpad, scrolling back and forth through the recorded footage. Him leaning in, her smiling, the angle of her hips as she slid into the car. He shut the door, circled around, and got behind the wheel. Then the Lexus pulled away. That was it. 15 seconds of actual footage, but it burned through my head like an endless loop. I lost count of how many times I pressed play, pause, rewind, slow. It was a compulsion, the same way someone might obsess over a half-healed scab, picking at it until it bled anew. It was late, past midnight. My office was dark except for a single table lamp casting an orange half-glow over the desk. The shadows danced on the walls whenever I shifted in my chair. I remember blinking against the dryness of my eyes, forcing myself to drink stale coffee that had grown cold hours ago. Outside, the city hummed, but I felt sealed inside my own little vacuum of betrayal. My wife, my ex-wife, or something close to that, had once whispered to me in this very room that I was her only one. 15 years back, that memory now so old it felt almost stolen from someone else's life. And now I was seeing her with him, in front of my very workplace, as if he was comfortable enough to pick her up right under my nose. They must have thought the late hour guaranteed privacy. But the building I own has cameras that run 24/7, and I have the authority to review them without question. I remember the moment, ages ago, when she told me she was leaving. She said it so matter-of-factly, like a surgeon delivering bad news. "You're a good man," she told me, "but I need a child. I can't do this if you're infertile." And we never really spoke about alternatives or a second opinion. She was out the door with her suitcase, leaving me behind with this huge emptiness in my chest. It was a vow ended, a promise broken. I went numb for weeks, then months, then years. Now here she was, walking with another man's hand on her waist. As I stared at the footage, I felt my fingers curling into fists. I recognized the tension traveling up my forearms, the dryness in my mouth, the pounding of blood in my temples. In the past, I might have tried to rationalize, but not now. Something inside me had frayed too far. I closed the laptop, letting the image burn in my memory. I sat in the orange glow of the lamp, alone, wide awake. It was 15 years after her exit. 15 years after I tried so hard to bury the ache of betrayal. And it turned out that I was never infertile, because I had a son, after all. She didn't know. Not at first. Not until one day, out of some cosmic coincidence, she saw him at a coffee shop near his college campus. I was with him that afternoon. He'd invited me to visit, to share a quick lunch. As we were leaving, I spotted a familiar silhouette at the corner table. Evelyn. I felt my stomach knot. My son brushed past her chair, politely excusing himself. She glanced up, and for a second, time froze. I saw her eyes widen. Her face went pale. She looked at his eyes, at his posture, at the shape of his jaw, all so eerily like mine. He has my voice, too, though deeper with youth. She must have recognized something in him. I couldn't hear her thoughts, but I saw her lips tremble, a question stuck in her throat. I left with my son, pretending not to notice her, but the moment stayed with me. The next day, I heard from a mutual friend that she was asking questions about the young man who looked so familiar. I didn't respond. Instead, I waited. I wanted to see how far she'd go. Weeks passed. I scrolled through all the old documents I'd hidden away in my locked cabinet. Test results, letters from doctors, All the proof that the initial diagnosis, my so-called barrenness, had been a tragic, incompetent mistake. My real medical records, the later test results that came too late to save my marriage. They all sat in a box labeled evidence, along with photographs, letters she'd once sent me, some of her text messages to him, Justin, the man who had stepped into my place. I started building my revenge carefully. The first step was simple. She needed to realize that the boy she saw was indeed her child. Mine as well. I was sure that knowledge alone would shake her, but I also set my sights on Justin. He and I had crossed paths in the business world. He was polished, charismatic, always with that practiced grin. He ran a PR and advertising outfit, aggressively expanding into new markets. He was proud, unstoppable, so confident. He had no reason to suspect me of anything. He saw me as just another competitor in a related field, sometimes bidding on the same contracts, sometimes exchanging superficial pleasantries at conferences. It wasn't difficult to study him. He had a personal brand that thrived on social media. The more I read, the more patterns I noticed in his writing style, his signature phrases, the way he signed off emails with, "Let's see what we can make of this." A distinctive ring, that was. Over time, I started a blog. A strange concept, perhaps, but I posed as Justin, a name that could blend with his existing presence. I mimicked his cadence, threw in references to deals he boasted about publicly, carefully curated every post so it felt plausible. "This is our official stance on the new campaign," I'd write. "I invite the big players to my table." I mirrored his bravado. People started following me by the hundreds, maybe thousands. They got confused. Some thought it was truly him, branching out to a new platform. Corporate partners reached out. Even his own team seemed uncertain at times which account was legitimate. And so the seeds of doubt were sown in his professional circles. Meanwhile, I'd watch from the sidelines as the real Justin scrambled, trying to correct people. "That's not my official page," he'd insist. But the damage was done. By the time he realized the blog was overshadowing his real brand, I'd already taken calls from prospective clients, subtly steering them away from him, saying, "We're rethinking our vendor strategy. We might pause or cancel certain contracts." I saw the fear creeping into his interviews, the hesitation in his voice. He looked like a man losing his grip on a carefully spun web of illusions. Evelyn, on the other hand, went silent. She didn't text me, didn't call me, didn't try to show up at my house, but I knew she was reeling on the inside. The day of the coffee shop must have haunted her. She'd seen something undeniably familiar in my son's face, her own son's face, a truth that threatened to unravel everything she thought she knew. That silence from her end was deafening. I waited for the storm, day after day, letting my rage simmer. One night, after rummaging through old letters, I found myself wide awake, with a throbbing headache that blurred my vision. I booted up my laptop again, studied the security footage from the parking lot with clinical precision. There was a moment I had missed, the short kiss they shared before climbing into the car. I glimpsed the angle of her neck, the way her hand cradled his chin for half a second, as if to steady him. It wasn't just a casual fling. They had an intimacy that cut me down. I felt something deep inside crack. I hated them both in that instant, though my hatred for him flared hotter. I shut down the computer. My mouth tasted bitter, as if I'd bitten into metal. I forced myself to remember how it had all begun, so many years ago. I was a fresh graduate, building my IT consultancy from scratch. She was the vibrant energy in my life, working in marketing, pushing me to chase bigger contracts, more expansions. Back then, we were unstoppable, or so I believed. Yet the day she told me, "I'm leaving," I felt the ground vanish under me. She needed a child. I couldn't give her that, or so we both thought. And so she packed, closed the door, and moved on. Time passed. The bitterness calcified. I eventually discovered the truth. The tests had been faulty. But by then she was with Justin, or at least interested in him. All illusions of reconciliation burned away. I never remarried. I never told her about the correct diagnosis. I did father a child, under complicated circumstances. But that's not a story I like to recount. Eventually, my boy found me, we connected. He's now in college, forging his own path. Let me be clear, I love my son. I want him to thrive. The day at the coffee shop was a freak coincidence. He has no part in my revenge plan. He's an innocent bystander. My anger is aimed squarely at her, and at that man who touched her so casually, who thought I was so irrelevant. There's a kind of slow burn that comes from years of festering betrayal, an inner dryness that sets you into unstoppable motion once the final spark hits. That spark was her reappearance in my daily sphere. So be it. It took months, but eventually I cornered Justin's reputation. Some of his longtime partners balked at the conflicting brand messages, the confusion about his official stances. Contract after contract, they started hesitating. Meanwhile, I posted more as Justin, weaving subtle disclaimers that the real him would never utter. I embedded illusions of poor management, late deliverables, questionable ethics. He tried to refute them, but the damage was done. He was losing ground, losing face. The tension was building, and I thrived on it. Then came the day I brought the evidence box home. Old photos, doctor's reports, legal documents, plus messages from her phone. I had somehow gathered them over the years. A few well-paid private investigators had helped me track down her communications with Justin from the early days of their affair. Back then, she'd flung herself into his arms soon after leaving me. Their texts sparkled with desire. They teased each other in a way that still made my stomach twist. She said she longed for his touch, his smell, how he made her feel alive. Reading that, I felt my lip curl. For 15 years, I tried to bury the memory of her leaving. Now, with each line of text, the pain was an open wound again. One night, while reading those texts, I found a particularly explicit one describing the time they first slept together. The details glowed from my phone screen like a sickness. She described how his presence in bed made her forget the emptiness of our marriage. I felt a tremor run through me. Was that how she justified it? My supposed impotence, my distance, my coldness. My chest tightened as I pictured them, her nails scraping across his back, his lips on her throat, some twisted image of a honeymoon suite that was never mine to experience again. My ears buzzed, and I nearly threw my phone across the room. But I forced myself to keep reading, to burn every detail into my mind. Because hatred is a powerful fuel. Still, it's one thing to hate from a distance. It's another to come face to face with those who wronged you. And soon enough, that confrontation became inevitable. You can't sabotage a man's business indefinitely without him catching on. Justin began to suspect something more personal was at play. He likely confronted Evelyn. Why is your ex-husband interfering? Are you talking to him? Maybe she told him about the boy in the coffee shop. Maybe he put 2 and 2 together. I don't know. All I know is that I got an email from Justin's official account. A real one, this time. Asking for a meeting. No salutation. Just, we need to talk. Name your place and time. I didn't reply. Instead, I phoned an old friend at a local marketing firm who had ties to some of Justin's biggest contracts. Quietly, I insisted on a meeting that overlapped with the time Justin suggested, ensuring Justin would be stuck waiting. My friend was happy to arrange it, especially since I hinted at future business worth a tidy sum. The next day, I got word that Justin had shown up to our scheduled meeting place, pacing angrily, looking at his watch, cursing under his breath. Eventually, he stormed off. He tried again with a text. Quit the games. Let's settle this like men. Arrogant, sure, but I could sense the desperation. I typed back one line. I'll see you soon. Then I powered off my phone. Meanwhile, she tried to reach me by phone. I let it go to voicemail. Her messages were short, guarded. We need to talk, Mark. I'm serious. Don't do this. Another time. Stop, please. You're hurting more people than you realize. I saved them, never responded. Let them stew in the silence. But I was hurting too. There was a heaviness in my chest that never lifted, a sense that each step forward in my plan was staining my own hands with something corrosive. I'd chosen this path, but it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like a slow form of self-poisoning. I recalled how she once said, "I love you," in a hushed voice, in that same corner of our old living room. I'd believed her. And now, here I was, forging documents, building false narratives, fueling illusions. If someone had told me years ago that I'd become this manipulative, I'd have laughed. But love, betrayal, heartbreak, they change you, or kill you. And maybe I was long dead on the inside. Eventually, the confrontation I was waiting for happened at my office after hours. I was finishing a meeting with a local partner. My staff had mostly gone home. I was standing in the hallway, collecting my jacket, when I saw her silhouette by the tinted glass doors. Evelyn. I let out a slow breath. My partner gave me a curious glance. "Everything okay?" I nodded, told him it was fine. He left, footsteps echoing. She stepped in, crossing the threshold into the foyer. The overhead lights hummed softly. We stood there, face to face. The woman I'd once shared everything with. Time had sharpened her features, lent new contours to her cheeks, but I still recognized the subtle slope of her nose, the softness of her lips. She wore a dark pantsuit, hair pinned back. Her eyes flicked to the floor, then back up at me. I waited in silence. It wasn't. Nothing happened. She blurted, as though trying to blow out a candle. "We didn't. It's not what it looks like." I stared at her. "You're telling me you two never touched? Never did anything?" She pressed her lips together. "Don't interrogate me like this, Mark." "Then tell me the truth," I said calmly. The calmness surprised even me. "Because the footage I have, the messages, the times you got in his Lexus, the day he kissed you, makes it pretty obvious." She swallowed. "That was, I don't want to discuss personal details. But yes, we've been seeing each other. You know that. But it's complicated." "Complicated," I repeated. I let the word sit there, like it was complicated to leave me, because you believed a single medical test. Like it was complicated to go behind my back with him. She closed her eyes briefly. Then she opened them again, and I saw a flash of guilt. Maybe anger, maybe shame. "I never meant to hurt you," she said softly. "At the time, I felt like my life was slipping away. I wanted a child. Mark, you have no idea what that meant to me." I gritted my teeth, forcing air into my lungs. "Yes, I do," I said, voice shaking at the edges. "He's in college now. You saw him, didn't you?" She went pale. I could see the pulse in her throat. "That boy." She pressed a hand to her lips. "Is he?" But I just stared, letting her question hang. Her eyes began to glisten with something like terror. I felt no pity. This was the moment she realized that the impossible had happened. I'd given her the child she always wanted, but neither of us had known until it was too late. She looked ready to collapse. I turned away, walked back to my office door, flicked on the overhead light. For a second, everything was illuminated too brightly, exposing the dust on the shelves, the swirl of tension in the room. "Mark, let's talk about this properly," she whispered, stepping closer. We can't do this here, please." "You have something to hide," I said. "Or are you just worried Justin will show up?" She shook her head, lips parted in protest. He's losing his mind. His deals are collapsing. He's angry. He knows you're behind it somehow. I'm not denying that what happened between us was real, but this is spinning out of control." I clenched my jaw, staring her down. "Out of control," I echoed. "It was out of control the moment you left me with that final statement. You're a good man, but you can't give me a child." I lived with that for 15 years, Evelyn. 15. And all that time, we had a son. You never gave me a chance, never told me anything. Her voice shook. I didn't know, Mark. I swear. I didn't. I found out only recently, after seeing him. By the time I realized, I was terrified. Terror's a funny thing, isn't it? I said. It eats at you from the inside. The way betrayal does. She flinched, and for a moment, I saw tears welling in her eyes. I'm sorry, she said, voice cracking. I can't change the past. I said nothing. Just turned away, flicked off the bright overhead light, and let the lamp near my desk cast its small, intimate glow again. The shadows lengthened. I heard her breathing. My own breath felt ragged, like I'd been running a race. Go home, I finally said, not looking at her. We're done here. She took a step forward, maybe wanting to touch my shoulder, but I moved away. Mark, please. Go. My voice dropped, husky and low, shaking with a fury I could barely contain. Before I say something I can't take back. I half expected her to argue, but after a few seconds, I heard her footsteps retreat. The door clicked. She was gone, leaving me alone with the swirl of half-light and my throbbing headache. I dropped into my chair, stared at the box of evidence, and felt a hollowness in my gut. The moment was all wrong. I hadn't expected her to break quite so easily. Part of me wanted her defiant. Part of me wanted to see her fight, to see the spark that drove her to such extremes. But she'd just collapsed. And now, the satisfaction I craved eluded me. Instead, I felt unsteady, consumed by bitterness. That night, I barely slept. My dreams were fragmented images of her face, of our son, of Justin's grin. I saw myself rummaging through old letters, but the letters caught flame in my hands. I heard the hiss of static from that security footage, looping my anguish forever. By morning, my pillow was damp from sweat, and I had to force myself out of bed, wiping the stale taste from my mouth. The next day, everything escalated. Justin cornered me in the underground parking lot of my own building. I just swiped my keycard to enter my private section when I noticed a figure stepping out from behind a concrete pillar. Even in the dim fluorescent lighting, I recognized him. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a sharp suit that did little to hide the tension in his stance. I turned off the engine and opened my car door slowly. "We talk now," he barked, voice echoing in the cavernous space. The reek of exhaust and damp cement hung in the air. I slammed the car door shut. "Make it quick." He took a step closer, fists clenched. "You've been messing with my accounts. Don't pretend you don't know. Clients are dropping me left and right. My entire brand is under siege." I shrugged. "That's unfortunate, but what does it have to do with me?" His eyes narrowed, reflecting the garish white overhead lights. "Cut the crap, Johnson. I might not be able to prove it yet, but I know you're behind this. Evelyn told me about your son. She told me you were furious about the past. You want revenge, so you're sabotaging me. Enough is enough." I felt a surge of dark triumph. "And if I were doing all that, what would you do about it?" He squared his shoulders. "I'm giving you a chance to stop before this becomes something bigger. I can find dirt on you if I try. I can ruin you too." His voice quivered with anger, but I sensed fear behind it. I let out a short, humorless laugh. "You might try, but you're already a step behind." He glared at me. "We can handle this like men," he repeated, as though that phrase was supposed to fix everything. "Or I can make some phone calls, and you'll regret you ever started this war." My throat felt tight, adrenaline kicking in. "War? You think you know war?" I hissed. "Try living with a lie for 15 years. Man. Try watching your wife walk away because she thinks you can't give her children. Then find out she's been in another man's bed that whole time. Don't talk to me about regret." Justin's jaw set, but I saw the flicker of uncertainty. "She told me you were infertile, that your marriage was dead long before I arrived." "She was wrong," I said, stepping closer so our faces were almost level. "But you never questioned it, did you? You just thought you could sweep in." Well, guess what, pal? That child she wanted so badly. She had him without even knowing. He's my son. And if you think I'm finished with you, his hand shot out, grabbed my lapel. You think I won't fight back? His breath smelled of coffee and anxiety. My heart hammered. I jerked free of his grip. I think it's already too late. Because you're losing your deals, your brand, your clients. And soon enough, you'll have nothing. No empire, no illusions. For a moment, I thought he'd swing at me. His nostrils flared, his lips twitched. But then he stepped back, struggling to contain his rage. This isn't over, he spat. Then he turned, footsteps echoing off the concrete, and disappeared behind a row of parked cars. I stood there, hands clenched, letting the tension drain from my body. The final confrontation was inevitable, between him, between her, and me. I felt closer to the brink than ever, but the sense of hollow triumph gnawed at me. I'd destroyed so many aspects of his business and her life. Yet the satisfaction tasted rancid. I told myself I needed one last push, one final blow that would make them understand the depth of my betrayal. That blow came a week later. I orchestrated a scenario where both of them would have no choice but to meet me on my terms. I used the blog to publicly hint at a major announcement, posted it under Justin H., with cryptic references to family matters. The real Justin went frantic, disclaiming it, but my platform overshadowed his. Then, through old channels, I whispered to Evelyn that if she wanted the truth about her son, she should come to the old house, the home we once shared, the one she'd walked out of 15 years ago. I planned it for a stormy evening, because storms always seem to bring everything to the surface. That night, thunder grumbled across the sky. The old living room was mostly empty, save for a few pieces of furniture I hadn't moved to my new place. A single lamp glowed, casting tall shadows on the walls. I had all my evidence laid out on a table. Photos, medical reports, letters. The windows rattled from the wind. My heart pounded with each roll of thunder, as though the storm was echoing my pulse. She arrived first, stepping inside in a rush of wind and damp air. Her hair had come loose from the downpour. She looked around the room, eyes landing on the half-packed boxes and the array of documents. I said nothing. I waited, letting her see it all. Then Justin arrived, shoulders glistening with raindrops. He scanned the scene, recognized my trap. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, voice taut. "Some twisted show and tell." Evelyn turned to me, her eyes pleading. "We don't have to do it this way. Mark, please." I inhaled, took a step closer to the table, letting them both feel the tension. 15 years ago, I said quietly, I was told I couldn't father children. She left me for you, or so it seemed. But we found out, eventually, that wasn't true. We had a child, my child, and neither of you cared to correct that mistake. She didn't know, Justin snapped, though there was a hint of hesitation. She believed the doctors. So did you. What's the point of this dog and pony show, Johnson? I locked eyes with Evelyn. The point? To show you everything you threw away for a lie. To remind you both that I spent 15 years in silent misery while you, Justin, strolled into my world and took what wasn't yours. Her voice shook. "Mark." "Shut up," I said, cold and deliberate. She froze. Thunder rumbled again. She pressed her lips into a thin line. Justin stepped forward, fists clenched. "You think humiliating us is going to fix anything?" he asked, voice low. "What do you even want? Money? An apology?" My laughter came out harsh. "Money," I repeated, scornful. "I don't need your money. As for an apology, it's far too late for that. I wanted to show you both that I'm no longer who I was. You took that man from me, the trusting husband, the quiet worker. You left me with this." I waved at the array of documents. A lifetime of regrets, half-truths, and bitterness. The lamp's glow flickered, or maybe it was just my vision. My throat felt dry. Evelyn trembled by the corner of the table. She glanced at the medical reports. The timeline that proved the boy in the coffee shop was hers, was mine. A silent tear slid down her cheek. Then I took one last item from the box, a sealed envelope. Inside here, I said, are photos of him, letters he wrote me. I want you to see his face up close. The same color eyes as mine, the same expressions. He's everything you said I couldn't give you. She covered her mouth with one hand, stifling a sob. Justin exhaled sharply, trying to look indifferent but failing. So that's it. You guilt-trip her with these pictures. You gloat that it was your kid all along. He turned to Evelyn. Let's go. We don't have to stand here and play his game. I gave a bitter chuckle. Game? You took my wife, my life, and turned it into a spectacle. Now you're losing your own business because of what I orchestrated. Yes, that was my revenge. And guess what? It worked. You're the one scraping for answers now. How does it feel to watch your empire slip away? He sneered. I'll rebuild. People like me always do. And as for her, you can have your precious revelations. I'm done. Evelyn turned to him, tears brimming. You're done. After everything we... She pressed her eyes shut, inhaling shakily. Mark, please, if there's any dignity left in you, let me at least see those photos. Let me understand him. I handed her the envelope. My hand shook slightly, but I managed to keep my face impassive. She took it, pulling out a few pictures. For a moment, her breath caught. I saw her lips part. She reached out to brush the image with trembling fingertips. My chest tightened. Thunder boomed overhead. Justin shifted restlessly, glancing at me like he was measuring whether it was worth punching me or just leaving. Maybe both. I half wished he would lash out. Part of me wanted a physical fight, something to redirect all this hatred. But he only glared. Finally, Evelyn set the pictures down on the table, tears staining her cheeks. She looked up at me. He's beautiful, she said hoarsely. He looks so much like you. I can't believe I didn't know. I swallowed. Well, now you do. Justin let out a short, dismissive laugh. All right, you've had your big scene, Johnson. You've shown us your file, your pictures. You've probably recorded every second of this for your twisted sense of closure. Congratulations, you destroyed my brand, rattled her life, and flaunted your child. Are you happy now? He started to leave, but I blocked his path. The tension crackled between us. We were inches apart, and I could see a vein pulsing at his temple. Evelyn stepped back, hugging her arms, her eyes flicking between us as if expecting violence. Move, Justin growled. I held my ground. I have one more thing to say. My gaze flicked to Evelyn, who stood in the lamplight, hair disheveled, cheeks wet. I remembered her warmth, her laughter, the gentle way she used to nestle against me at night. Then I recalled how she walked out the door, how I found her texts describing another man's body, her breathless confessions of ecstasy with him. The memory sank its claws into my heart. My voice came out quiet, almost detached. You said once that you loved me, in this very room, where we used to whisper at night. But now, standing here, I realize that man you loved. He doesn't exist anymore. You two killed him. What's left is just a shell. I took a slow breath. I am not me anymore. I am his hands, the hands that typed those entries, that shredded your deals, that lured you both in. And I won't touch you again. My voice reverberated with finality, as though pronouncing a sentence. Evelyn tried to speak, but no words came. Justin stared at me, confusion in his eyes, as if he couldn't believe the cold emptiness he was hearing. Outside, the wind rattled the window, sending a draft through the old living room. The silence in that moment felt deeper than any sound could possibly break. I stepped aside. Justin hesitated, then pushed past me, grabbing Evelyn's wrist as he went. She flinched, shook him off. The front door was partly ajar, and the storm outside hissed with rain. For a second, the lightning flashed, throwing a harsh glare across the bare walls. She stared at me, lips parted, eyes red. I gave her nothing, just the shell of a man she'd once known, the same empty expression that had followed me for so many years. She opened her mouth. No sound emerged. Her throat worked in silence, tears shimmering. Then, as if finally defeated, she slipped through the door into the storm. Justin lingered another fraction of a second, glaring at me in fury, then turned and followed her, letting the door slam behind them. And then, in the room, there was silence. I stood there, staring at the lamp's warm glow on the photograph she'd left behind. My son, the only good thing that came out of this entire twisted saga of deceit and betrayal. Rain pounded on the windows, and the thunder rolled, but inside that old house, I could feel a quiet so absolute it stung my ears. I felt no triumph, no sense of true victory. I'd inflicted my revenge, yes, but in doing so, I had torn open wounds that would never fully heal. For a moment, I closed my eyes, let out a shuddering breath. I wasn't sure if I felt relief or just a deeper kind of numbness. Maybe both. Eventually, I walked over to the table, picked up the scattered photographs and medical sheets, and slipped them back into the box labeled evidence. Then I flicked off the lamp. Lightning flashed through the window, casting a fleeting silhouette of me across the floor, like a ghost, faint and hollow. I stood still until the darkness settled around me, left me alone with my regrets. I could still picture the look on her face as she realized the truth. I could hear Justin's threats, hollow as they were, taste the bitterness in my mouth. And yet, beneath it all, I recognized a grim acceptance that this was the final chord in our story. There was nothing left to say. I walked to the front door, pulled it open, and felt the damp, stormy air wash over me. The sky was fractured by lightning, thunder crashing in the distance. Somewhere out there, she was running to her car, Justin trailing behind, both of them undoubtedly shattered in their own ways. I lingered at the threshold, letting the cold wind whip at my face, as if punishing me for what I'd done. A drizzle spattered my shoes, the floor, but I didn't move. I tried to think of something to feel, relief, satisfaction, sorrow, anything. But all that filled me was that same hollow resonance, the same quiet that swallowed my words. I whispered, almost to no one, "It's done." Then I shut the door softly. In the darkness, I remembered how she once whispered in that same spot, so long ago, "I love you." I remembered believing it. And I let those memories drift, lost in the hush of the house, overshadowed by the faint hum of the storm. There was a flicker of light from a passing car outside. Then it was gone. Step by step, I walked back through the empty hallway. Even my footsteps sounded muted, drowned in the hush that I'd become. The final line of my revenge had been delivered. I felt like I'd exorcised something monstrous from my soul, yet left behind a crater. At last, I sank into the old couch in what used to be our living room. I gazed at the shadowy ceiling, feeling the stale air cling to me. My hands trembled a little, the aftershock of too many nights without sleep, of a confrontation that ended in a slow fade instead of fireworks. She was out there. Justin was out there. And I, the man they'd broken, was all that remained in these walls, with a single box of evidence and an avalanche of regrets. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I pictured my son's face, the future he still had. It made me want to close my eyes, to hold on to at least that shard of hope, but the rest was silence. So I sat there in the dark, listening to the storm subside little by little, until even the thunder became a distant murmur. My final thought, before exhaustion dragged me under, was that I had changed more than I ever thought possible. I had become the ruin I once feared, a man hollowed out by betrayal, sustained only by vengeance. There was no going back. And in that acceptance, for better or worse, I found a strange, grim peace. Silence clung to the walls. The lamp remained off, and the last echoes of rain tapped against the window. Outside, the city lights flickered, but inside, the hush was complete. I was alone with the end I'd created, and all that was left to greet me was the shape of my own emptiness. And at last, I let it swallow me whole.